Today's session, as Dr. Myangwa noted, is focused on how to harness the demographic dividend in Africa, that massive youth number that could be a catalyst for economic growth and lasting peace, or potentially a source of economic instability and conflict. And the stakes couldn't be higher because our collective ability to harness this demographic dividend in a positive direction will determine the future trajectory of Africa, with potential security and economic implications for others around the globe as well. So today I'd like to share a few observations about the opportunity and challenge in front of us to harness that massive demographic dividend in Africa. I'll touch on a couple ways that the US government is working as a partner to propel young Africans forward. And I'll close with a short call to action for the young leaders, both in this room, but also overseas, and all the practitioners as well. So there is a historic opportunity for youth to determine the future trajectory of Africa because of the massive youth numbers and also the growing power of technology that's at young people's fingertips today. Dr. Myangwa and Madam Ambassador talked earlier about the numbers. We define youth very broadly up to 35, so we consider over 65% of the population in Africa to be youth. For a continent of 1.2 billion people, if you also include North Africa, we're talking about nearly 800 million people. And while many populations around the world are starting to grow older, Africa continues to get younger and will remain one of the most youthful continents for a long time to come. Additionally, people across Africa are growing up as digital natives with the power of technology at their fingertips through smartphones and the ability to get their voice heard in newfound ways. More than 500 million people across Africa now subscribe to mobile services. And smartphone usage has doubled over the last 2 years to 250 million. Young Africans today are connected to the rest of the world like never before and are using technology to build powerful businesses in response to the challenges that they face. And you'll hear about one of them pretty soon as well. We've also seen some great success stories like Kenya's M-Pesa, Zimcab in Zimbabwe, that was a predecessor to Uber and Lyft. But with a population of 1.2 billion people, Africa can develop a massive middle class that can be an engine for growth, a source of revenue, and a powerful global market for the world. So we know that the numbers and the potential for economic growth are there. But the question remains as to whether this massive youth demographic can be that catalyst for economic growth and peace, or potentially a source of economic stability and conflict. And I believe that one of the important answers to that question hinges on young people's perceptions of and relationships with their host governments. Now, I've been very lucky to have had the chance to travel international in my role as Special Advisor for Global Youth Issues at the State Department. And I've had a chance to meet a multitude of young African leaders in other parts of the globe. And I've observed that perceptions of fairness, of justice, and equality of opportunity truly matter. I've seen that there's a widespread belief among youth in Africa, but also the world over, that the lottery of birth shouldn't determine one's prospects or treatment in life. That regardless of where you're born, who you're born to, people deserve to have a similar opportunity to pursue their passions, to make the most of their talents, and to receive the same treatment under law from police, the courts, and the state. When young people believe that the system is fair and just, that the governments are truly focused on the people, then they're more willing to work in partnership with those governments to achieve economic progress and lasting peace. But when feelings of injustice or unfairness emerge, often stemming from perceived inequality, corruption, or discrimination from the government, then there's trouble ahead. So I believe that one of the greatest challenges in unlocking the potential of young Africans and harnessing this demographic dividend is focusing on these issues of justice, fairness, equality of opportunity, and good governance. And this isn't just something unique to Africa, but also a challenge in other parts of the world, including right here in the United States. So as the US government, we're trying to engage young leaders in regional governments in this particular space. We have great initiatives like YALI, the Young African Leaders Initiative, that focuses on key components of rule of law themes, such as good governance, transparency, and responsive leadership. Our current YALI campaign for the 500,000 strong Yali network is even focused around the themes of good governance and transparency today. We also continue to do youth leadership trainings in our 4 Yali regional leadership centers in South Africa, Ghana, Kenya, and Senegal. We support efforts like the Africa Women's Entrepreneurship Program that helps to expand opportunities for women. And many of our international visitor leadership programs are focused on rule of law themes. But we also remind governments that embracing values of justice and fairness will leave their youth wanting to be those partners for peace and drivers of economic progress. Now, it can be challenging today for young people to lead by example and do the right thing when others around them are benefiting from corruption, injustice, and unfair practices. So it's important for all of us to continue lifting up those stories of the countless dynamic young Africans and governments who are leading by example and showing what good governance and partnership looks like. Because these stories and examples can serve as powerful catalysts for others. I often think of the Bobby Kennedy Ripples of Hope speech that I'm sure many folks here know, that he gave to National Union of South African Students at the height of the apartheid fight back in 1966. He talked about that idea that singular acts of courage, ripples of hope when pooled together, can create a powerful current of action that can produce meaningful results, that can change norms, and that can determine the trajectory of history as we know it. So I want to close by reminding all of us today on Africa Day that we can be those ripples of hope who come together as a larger current to advocate for and showcase efforts of governments and young leaders pushing for greater justice, for greater fairness, good governance, and equality of opportunity. And I'm confident that if we collectively tackle this challenge together around perceptions of justice and fairness, then we can further unlock that large youth number across Africa and propel them down a more positive pathway of progress, of partnership for economic growth and peace, while also ushering in security and economic dividends for many other countries and people around the globe. So I remain incredibly optimistic about the future of Africa because, like many of you, I've had a chance to meet the young Africans who are going to drive that future forward. So thank you so much, and I look forward to the question and answer session.